Hey Christchurch, hope you're doing well today. Wanted to spend a few minutes talking about what it is that we spend our time thinking about. If you're like me, you spend a lot of time in your own head, where a lot of what it is that you're thinking about and a lot of the things that are imposing themselves on your day are not things that you discuss, but it's more just kind of rattling around up there. And I read a really interesting study not too long ago that says that people spend 46.9% of their time thinking about either the past or the future. So 46.9% of the time. So basically, what that study said, and it was done by Harvard, so it has to be true. But but I think it is true because it's true in my experience. And if you were to sit and think about it for a minute, if you were to think about all of the thoughts that go through your mind during the course of the day, at least half of them are usually recounting something that happened in the past, good or bad, but something that's happened to you in the past, or something that you remember from the past, or something that you're planning for or hoping for in the future. And that's an interesting and terrifying statistic to me, because if you're not careful, you can spend most of your day not in your day. You can spend most of your day either in the past or thinking about something that hasn't even happened yet and envisioning it. And there's nothing wrong with planning, and there's nothing wrong with the reality of dealing with our past, because our past shapes our present and it shapes our future, but it doesn't determine them. And oftentimes, what I find myself dwelling on the past is not always the positive things. It's generally dwelling on things in the past that were either hurtful, or that were disappointing, or that were frustrating. And if I'm not careful, when I think about the future, I think about the future the way that I want to envision it. And you have to be careful in both spheres, because Satan can get to you either way. He can get you to so dwell on the past, and so dwell on failures, and so dwell on hurts, that your present can be completely demolished because you're stuck. You can also spend so much of your time daydreaming towards the future and not planning for it, or planning for the future without stopping and asking God, if this is what it is that you want from me, then you can spend a lot of your time constructing a future that will never come to pass, because it's not what God's will is for you. And so in either case, how does the Bible address this? How does the Bible talk to us in the 46.9% of our day in our thinking, where we are either thinking about the past or we are thinking about the future? Well, there's two verses that come to mind. The first verse, when thinking about the past, is from the Apostle Paul. It's in 2 Corinthians chapter 5, 17 and 18. And this is what he says. This means that anyone who belongs to Christ has become a new person. The old life is gone, a new life has begun. And all of this is a gift from God, who brought us back to himself through Christ. And God has given us this task of reconciling people to him. And so, not just here, but in other places, Paul, he's not a cognitive psychologist, but he's reminding us, and he's connecting us to the truth that when we spend so much of our time thinking about the past, that what he wants us to dwell on is not the failures and not the disappointments and not all of the negative things that can destroy your present, but he wants us to remember that, yes, that happened, and it shaped who I am, but my identity isn't in all of those hurts and in all of those disappointments. My identity is new, because I've been given a new identity as a child of God through Jesus. And because of all of those things, God promises to use all of those pains and disappointments to make us who we are, but also so that we can then reconcile other people to him. So often you will find, and it's probably your experience, where when you find someone who's experienced something the same way that you have, that there's a bond, that there's a kinship there. And what God says is that I desire that you use that to be a bond and a kinship that then you can take those past experiences and hurts and failures and point people to me, reconcile people to me through Jesus. So that's how the Bible, and that's how Paul says, let's use this part of our thinking, this 46.9% of our day where we're partially dwelling on the past. Let's use it for this, to reconcile people to God and to understand that we are new creation. But Scripture also talks about the future. And it's on the stickers that we have had made here at Christ Church. It's Jeremiah 29:11. And you know this verse, but it's where Jeremiah says, "For I know the plans that I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you a hope and a future." One of the things fundamentally that we have to deal with is whether or not we're going to give our future to God, or whether or not we're going to decide that that's for us to decide. And instead of saying to God, what is it that you're calling me to do, and bending our will and bending our visions to what it is that He has for us, we can resist that and then be frustrated and angry because the things that we wanted didn't come to pass. And that's real. That happens with everybody. But what Jeremiah is pointing us to is that we have a God and a King who doesn't just reconcile us so that our sins are taken away, but that He has a plan. That He has a plan for you and for me, and that we're called to walk in His steps. But the reality, too, that helps us to understand those parts of the plan that are hard and that we wouldn't choose and that seem like God seems distant and far away, we have to remember that He is good, that He promises to love us, that He promises never to leave us or to forsake us, that He promises that His plan and His future is so much brighter and so much more beautiful and so much more freeing and so much more empowering than what you and I could construct and manufacture for ourselves. 46.9% of our day is spent thinking about the past or thinking about the future. Let these verses guide you as those thoughts come into your mind and those recollections and those dreams, and once again be rooted and established in the love and the goodness of God. Have a great day.